Welcome to the For Love and Money podcast, the show where business and social purpose meet to inspire a movement for positive change. Here's your host, Carolyn Butler-Madden.
Today I'm recording on Guyamigal and Garigal country, and I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands across which you and I are meeting, wherever you are in the world. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and to the many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities whose deep connection to country reminds us what it truly means to think about the long term. Here's a number that stopped me cold when I first heard it. 70%. That's the share of Australia's emissions associated with the stuff we build. Roads, railways, airports, tunnels, all of it. And the energy it takes to run them once they're built. 70%. And the profession best placed to move that number? Civil engineering. The catch is that it's one of the most conservative industries on the planet. My guest today has a favourite description for it. A stubborn bull with a ring in its nose. You pull and you pull, gently, gently, and slowly it moves. Robin Power is the Chief Executive of Insitutek and the founding chair of Ground Level Alliance, a volunteer-powered non-profit built to do one thing: make sustainability a daily practice for the people who design and build our infrastructure. He's not a civil engineer by training, he's a manufacturing engineer, which means he sees the industry through a people and process lens that most people in it don't have. And it was that outsider's perspective, combined with a deeply painful experience of losing everything in a failed property venture, that set him on the path to purpose. What I love about Robin's story is that it's not one of those neat linear journeys. It's a story of getting smashed on the concrete, his words, getting up, shaking yourself off, and asking, what do I actually want to use this vehicle for? And then building something remarkable. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Robin, welcome to the For Love and Money podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Me too. First question. I'd love your take on this. When you think about purpose in business, or even just business itself, do you think there's a role for love?
That's a great question. So I've thought about this question actually because I think that it's multifaceted. So when I was thinking about it, I thought, okay, well, it's important in business, especially if you're running a business, to, really dig what you do as an organization. But then underlying that, it's more about why you do what you do as well. And I think that's probably, the core of it. And so, if you look in for us, we're interested as a business in transforming civil construction for a more sustainable world. Now, that's big words for a small organization. So there's things that we can do directly, but there's also things that we can do through influence. And we do both of those, and we're very conscious about doing both of those. But to expand on that concept of love in business, I think it's also important to have love towards your team. So there was a great quote, and I don't know if it was Simon Sinek's quote originally, but he certainly uses it, and that was around leadership. And, leadership really about not being in charge, but about looking after those in your charge. And I think there's an element of love in that as well. And I was just chatting with one of our clients this morning, and they were telling me a little bit more about their personal story. So they're just starting up a new business, and we've been supporting them with that. And we love doing that, supporting, young, hungry businesses in their growing journey. And we go out of our way to, kind of look after them. But he was telling me about, his journey to getting there and how he had gone through separation, for example, and how this was, you know, a really big step for him. And the reason that he was doing it was basically to do better for his kids. And, you know, so, and that, you know, kind of in my head, that just gave me that extra juice to go, damn, well, you know, we're just going to do that little bit more to help this guy to, you know, to maybe bring more opportunities to him or whatever, any way in which we can help, just because I've got that little bit of new insight about why he's doing what he's doing. So anyway, a long answer to a great question.
That's a great answer, Robin, and I love that story. And I find it fascinating, right? The different ways people both respond to the question and answer the question. And many people have sat in your chair and said, yeah, it's not a word you associate with business, but, and then go on. But even listening to you talk and talking about that client story, that young client, and that he wanted to, you know, do good for his children, you said we love supporting clients like that.
Right.
That is the language of business. You know, when you have clients that align with your values.
I think I would make a distinction. For us, we're what I would describe as a relationship business. Relationships for our business are everything. If we didn't have those relationships, we wouldn't exist. And so it's, you know, looking after those who have had, you know, the courage to place their business with us and doing everything that we can to support them. And, you know, and that's something which is very real. And it's, you know, a culture which we work on very, very hard to make sure that when our clients are really up against it, pushed really hard up to the wall, that we are there with them, supporting them. And there's two things that come out of that. One is that they can feel confident with that. And the other thing is it binds you together in a way like you haven't been bound together before, because they remember those moments.
It's the discretionary effort.
It's the discretionary effort. And you know, like when they come back to you and they just go, geez, I can't believe you guys did that.
And how good does that feel for you and your team?
Absolutely. That really counts for something.
And it connects to, you know, it's discretionary effort driven by the energy that people want to put into something. And then that sort of feedback begets more positive energy. And, you know, that's how you build a distinctive, authentic, and successful business.
Agreed. And, you know, as I said, it also, you know, reflects in the team as well. So, you know, I'll give you an example with one of my colleagues where we took a chance with them. We didn't know them that well. They'd started working with us overseas. And then we decided to, you know, they really wanted to come here and, you know, have opportunities in Australia. And we decided to, you know, kind of figure out ways to make that happen. And we have made that happen. And, you know, it's very special because that doesn't just impact on them directly, them and their, you know, that individual and their partner, but it also impacts on their family. And so, for example, this person that I'm talking about, their sister is now here studying, and that's because of the fact that
Oh, wow.
yeah, right. And then yesterday we had a discussion, and we gave her a pay rise. And the first words that came out of her mouth were, "Oh my goodness, I'm so happy about that. That means that I've now got a way of being able to support my brother going to college."
Oh, wow. Which says a lot about the kind of people you attract as well.
So that's powerful, right? That's really powerful. That's making a difference in somebody's in somebody's life. And it's a real privilege to be able to do that. And maybe, as a smaller organization, you've got, more flexibility to be able to do some of the things that we've done. I get that. But, it just shows what's possible with business.
Yes.
And to be honest, that's what really drives me. It's it's not just making money for our shareholders, but it's actually being able to use business as a force for good. And that was the way that we met.
Mm.
So we met at a B Corp gathering, so an annual gathering or biannual gathering of people within the B Corp community. And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with B Corp, but essentially it's this concept of using your business as a force for good and being recognized for that, but going through a very intrusive audit process to get there, to get that independent validation. And so, yeah, that's kind of, something which we're very proud that we are certified for. We're in civil engineering. We're very unusual.
Yes.
Very unusual.
And that's why I was so interested to learn more about your business and learn more about what you're doing. We met at the last session of the event, so it was fortuitous. And then having that chat to you and getting a deeper understanding of what you're doing and what drives you. I think this is a really fascinating example to have on the podcast. So I would love you, Robin, to share your journey and the moments that shaped you to bring you here to what you're doing today with Insitutek. Have I pronounced that right?
Yes, you have.
Thank you. And Ground Level Alliance.
Oh.
But before, and I think this will give it context, before you take us on that journey. So you've just spoken about it now, and you describe yourself as someone who believes business should be a force for good, both socially and environmentally.
Mm.
Was that always part of how you thought about work, or did that conviction grow over time, or was there a moment?
Yeah, I would say there was a moment, a period of time when that really sort of, came into being. We've always recognized the opportunity, within business to do good, to contribute, and, so on. But, and, the Insitutek business in different forms has been around since about 2006. And, in the earlier days, we'd kind of run it as an order taking business. And so when somebody came along and showed interest, then we would serve them and so on. And that had grown over time. But I was also running a property development business, which was our own. And that fell over. And that was very painful for us, but it was also very painful for our investors. And that caused me to really think very deeply and very hard about what am I doing, and why am I doing what I'm doing, and what impact do I want to have? And so if you talk about a moment, and it was a period of time, but, there was a period of about a year, and I read, more books than I'd read, I don't know in how long. And, I really dug deeply into how how people were using business as a force for good. I learned more about social enterprise, for example. I learned about the B Corp movement. I made a decision, during that period of time that, well, we were going to make, Insitutek as our thing, and we were going to become B Corp certified. And that was, something which was really important for me. And so, if I look at it, so what's crazy is, right, I'm not even a civil engineer by training. So I'm a manufacturing engineer by training.
Oh,
so
okay.
Manufacturing is all about people and process. And so in the civil engineering space, I bring a different lens to the table. But we've been working in the industry for more than 15 years, and we work with some incredibly smart people, both academically and practically. And I'm very privileged to do that. And so we've learned a great deal, from them. And so, we kind of sort of, bring a different thinking to the table. But it was, kind of really sort of during that period of time that it really came into focus, and, that really sort of set us on a trajectory going forward. And, also very hungry because, we also lost everything. I didn't lose my family, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But, all of those concepts of wealth, if you like, which we conventionally think about, I'd lost. And so, it was like getting smashed on the concrete really hard, and then, kind of getting up and shaking yourself off. And I think it's, kind of in those moments when those are really defining moments. And it's about how you respond. And it was a very, very grounding experience as well. So
it's interesting to me that, you went through that experience that was painful, very painful, as you said. And I can totally understand it. I've been through something a little bit similar a long, long time ago. But what's interesting to me is it would have been incredibly painful to you, and you lost a lot in that. And yet, as a result of that, you're actually thinking about others.
to be honest, I don't think we would be as focused on doing what we are now if I hadn't gone through that. And so I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it is also about how you come out of it. And I'm really proud of what we're doing now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to, just for our listeners, because I want to just dig into that a little bit deeper, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And you saying we wouldn't be the business we are, we wouldn't care as deeply as we do if I hadn't gone through that. What was it in particular? What was it specifically that made you want to build a business that actually benefited people and planet, having gone through that? Like,
I think it was, if I look at the civil engineering stuff, right? And this has changed over time, but at that time, if I looked at the civil engineering stuff, did that really get me excited? And I'll be honest, it didn't. Okay. But what did get me excited was, here we have a vehicle which we have created, which has been around for a while, which we haven't focused our attention on, and now we are going to focus our attention on it. And that vehicle will enable us to do, hopefully, some really good things. And I also learned during that time that, let's say in Australia, something like 70% of emissions are associated with stuff that we build and then the operation of that stuff. So think roads, think airports, think railways, all your infrastructure, and so on. 70%.
that is wild. And you've shared that with me before, and I couldn't believe it. And you track that back to civil engineering.
And civil engineering touches all of it.
Yeah.
And so we as civil engineers, here I am saying we as civil engineers. So the civil engineering profession is involved in the earlier stages of projects. Okay. And it's at those earlier stages when you can really have most impact. And that's one of the things that, I learned during my period of reflection. And that's powerful, right? So as civil engineers, we've really got, people in the civil construction space, we've got our hands potentially on some really powerful levers. But what I found was that we actually weren't really pulling those levers. And so one of the things that we did is we we founded this organization called Ground Level Alliance. And Ground Level Alliance essentially is established to help people in the civil engineering space with knowledge, skills, expertise, to help them to make sustainability in their work a daily activity. And at the moment, it's fringe, it's at the edges, but with knowledge, skills, expertise, and giving them that confidence, we can do something about that. And we've got an incredible crew of people. We've got 4 things that we're working on, of which an education program, no surprise, is really the centerpiece. It's not out of the ground yet, but it's a work in progress. And what we recognized was that, people in our space are not educated about sustainability in their formal, education. They may be passionate in their daily lives, about taking care of the planet, but they don't, or they can't apply that in their daily work, or they don't know how to. And so what we're doing is to help them to understand how they can implement good practice into their daily work, and also bring others on the journey. Because you can have all of the technical expertise that you like, but you need to be able to overcome all of the obstacles which are going to be in front of you. Oh, it's going to cost too much. Oh, you guys and your green stuff, and all of the issues. Oh no, the design doesn't allow that. Oh no, that's the regulator won't allow that, and so on. So all of these things are issues which, as civil engineers and those working around, they will encounter. So there are ways through, and that might be over, under, around the edges, over the top. And it's tricky. It's not easy, but it is possible. And, part of it is showing people with case studies, for example, what's possible. It's about giving them good practice guides and notes and those types of things, but it's also holding their hand through the journey. And that's what the course is all about. It's highly practical. It's basic learning by doing. You learn something, you go and apply it in your flow of work. You come back to the classroom. This is what worked. This didn't work. I don't know how to deal with this situation. What would you recommend? Right? So it's very hands-on learning experience. And the intention is to have multiple cohorts and, for that alumni to grow, so that, what I've also learned in business, it's not organizations that make change. It's individuals that make change. And maybe the organization is the vehicle through which they do that, but it's the individuals that make change. And so, in Ground Level Alliance for the course, what we're looking for is those people who want to be the change makers. They've got the motivation, they've got the passion, they don't necessarily have the knowledge base, the experience, and so on. They've got the level of, responsibility to be able to implement, but they're just looking for, I'm not sure what to do and how to do it, and so on, and to have, others who they can share the journey with. And that's what this course is about.
Before we dive back in, a quick word from me. If you're enjoying this conversation, you might want to know that I work with leaders and organisations on how purpose becomes a powerful driver of trust, performance, and resilience. I speak at leadership conferences and company events about how purpose shows up where it matters most, in leadership, in culture, and in strategy, helping organisations grow with clarity and confidence in a changing world. You can find out more at my website, carolynbutlermadden.com. Now, back to the episode. There's so much there I want to unpack, and I love this. First of all, it's fascinating to me that, so you've got Insitutek, you've got your organisation, but that's not enough. It's not enough for you to just, use your organisation as a force for good. It's how do you impact the industry, and that defining moment. Okay, so let's go back to when you discovered that stat on 70%. Say it again. 70% of
70%
emissions
associated with stuff that we build and the operation of that stuff.
Wow, wow, wow. So when you came across that stat, obviously it had an impact on you, but just take me through, how did it make you feel? And just, I'd love to understand, like, what was going on in your head?
There's a whole sort of, like series of events that kind of came together. So there I am, I'm thinking about this stuff. I'm, thinking about how we can really accelerate the growth of, Insitutek and so on. And I remember particularly listening to this webinar, which was being delivered by the Australian Geomechanics Society. And it was a case study, and it was actually from London Underground in the UK. And they were building tunnels. And the people involved, the organization, Arab, actually got a lot of respect for them. They're very forward thinking. And so they had more recently at that time started looking through a different lens. So there's typically a cost lens, a quality lens, and a time lens. Right? But they'd started looking through this carbon lens. And only because they were starting to look through a different lens, they started asking questions about how many ventilation shafts were required for these tunnels. And what they found was that after doing some modeling, they found that there weren't as many ventilation shafts needed as were required by the regulator. Anyway, so they went away, they scratched their heads, they checked their calculations, they got some others to check their calculations, and then they went, no, this is fair dinkum. And so they went to the regulator with their client, showed them all of the evidence, and basically, to cut a long story short, they reduced the number of ventilation shafts which were required for this tunnel project. Okay? And as a result, the tunnel project was delivered in a shorter period of time. It cost less. The quality was the same, but they also substantially reduced the carbon profile. And so that project taught me that the standards, they're just the standards. It doesn't mean you can't do something differently, but this is the standard way in which we do it. Okay? So the standards can be challenged. And you can take something to a regulator and you can get an exception signed off. It is possible. So it just highlighted to me that there are options, there are possibilities, and you just need to figure a way through. That's not to say that every project can be impacted and you can do better on every project, but chances are you can do better than what you're doing now.
So I can picture you sitting, watching a webinar. You've already been through, some tough experiences. You already have in mind a vision of the kind of business you want to build. But in that moment when you saw that case study, how did you feel?
Excited. Like, this is possible. This is really possible. And part of, like, for example, with the case studies, right? So the idea with the case studies is not necessarily to give people the answer, but it's to actually get them closer. Okay. And if you can get them closer, then that creativity, engineers can be creative, right? Incredibly creative. But if it was here to right over there, that may just be, it's impossible. It's never been done before. It's impossible. But if you get them closer, then if I'm going from here to here, what about if we did this? What about if we did that? Can we get so-and-so involved in the conversation? I'm sure that they've got something to contribute. I've seen this done in a different industry. Maybe we can apply that type of technique or that type of thinking in our industry.
It opens everything up, doesn't it? Instead of just following what's been done before because it's always been done this way before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, please, let's make no mistake. What we're trying to do is not easy. And, it's not something that happens overnight, and the civil engineering space is notoriously slow moving. Sometimes we describe it as the stubborn bull with the ring note in the nose, and you're like, pulling it gently, gently, gently forward. It's hard
One
work.
step at a time. And
One step at a time.
so I have heard that that engineers are famously conservative,
They are.
bullish, bullishly conservative. So you've made a choice. You've made a choice to become a change agent in an industry that is very conservative,
Yes.
which is not the path of least resistance. So I'm curious to understand, what has it cost you? What has it cost you professionally? What has it cost you personally?
I don't look at it in terms of cost. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of dedication, a lot of time. Okay. Time is one thing that we never get back. And it's an investment, right? It's an investment that you're making. And, we always say to our clients, I mean, we've been working with some of our clients for more than 15 years. And, we've gone through that sort of early adopter phase, and those ones that the treasured early adopters, the ones that you find and you just go, oh my goodness, wow, this is awesome. They get it. They get it. They're willing to do something differently, or they've seen something different elsewhere and they want to see it implemented here.
Are they generally the younger ones?
Not necessarily.
Ooh.
Not necessarily. No, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. It's about putting the right thing in front of them and, watching them like grab it and go. We've got, some of our clients and, they're sort of closer towards retirement age, but they're as hungry as, and they continue to be pioneers in their thinking and so on. And we're so respectful of them, and we do everything that we can to, look after them and support them and so on. And, and it's been an exciting journey that we've had with them as well, like doing all these new things that have never been done before and figuring the ways through and so on, because it just makes it easier for those who follow behind. But somebody needs to do that early work. And we recognize it, for our products and so on, that we lead the way. And well, that's what our clients tell us anyway. And so, yeah, it's difficult. It's, frustratingly slow and so on, but we've made headway. I actually just put a post out the other day and was just reflecting on, 5 years of having a standard for lightweight deflectometers here in Australia, for example.
Say what?
Oh, sorry, it's a piece of equipment, but and like all these people were, kind of commenting on the post and going, "Gee, yes, we have come a long way," and that's our work that made that happen. And and it's not just our work, but it's the work that we did together with our clients to, like what we find with new technologies is not necessarily the technology which has changed. It's people's understanding and confidence in the technology which changes. So with the early adopters, once they've done their work, then other people will go, oh, we saw that it's been done on that project over there. Or they see, oh, it's been done on that project over there. Oh, maybe we should have a go too. Would you be willing to help us? It's like, absolutely. And I can connect you with people who have done what you're trying to do. Would you be interested? Oh, that would be awesome, because then it becomes so much easier. And so the path, becomes, there's less resistance.
What you're talking about there, I mean, I'll translate that as, if you're building a movement of change, you can't do it alone. You need to find your people, and you need to find the people who share a common narrative, who share a vision and are inspired to act. And that's
You're
the only
absolutely right.
way. That's
There's this great video. I loved it. So there's this, and you've probably seen it as well. So there's this guy who's dancing crazily on a hillside, and he's dancing all on his own. And there's people all around, on the grass, and they're enjoying the festival and so on. And then one other person jumps up and starts dancing with this crazy guy in their own crazy style and so on as well. And then, after a pause, more people get up. And at the end, there's only one or two people who are still sitting on the ground.
I love that video. It talks about the power. It talks about leadership, doesn't it? But it's the power of the first follower.
Yes.
The leader is a crazy person unless he has a first follower. Or she.
Absolutely. So here we go. Here's the crazy person.
Yes, yeah. And you've got your first and second and third followers, and you're building that movement of change. And that's really exciting. So Ground Level Alliance, who resources it? Who is making this happen?
Sure. It's volunteer power.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's all that discretionary effort, that extra put in that people are putting in. And I'm, so respectful of our crew and what they do and the effort that they put in and so on. It's humbling. And, as I said before, I'm ambitious, I want things to go faster and so on. But, we're doing okay. I'd love to do faster, but we're doing okay.
Yeah.
And we're making, some progress. I'd love to do more. I'd love to get, more people involved in the crew. I'd love to get, I'd like to get, people committing to this course as well as kind of sort of sponsors, if you like, from an organization perspective. Then that gives us confidence to be able to press the go button on terms of getting funding and those sort of things. And that's, part of what we're working on at the moment. But, all these things, they start with a seed, and then you need to, and the seed is out there, and now we're just, kind of nurturing the seed. We're watering the seed and getting it, start germinating.
Mm. So you mentioned a course as part of the Ground Level Alliance. Is that the same course? I know you mentioned to me that you were developing a course in collaboration with Melbourne Business School. Is that the same
That's
course?
right. That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah. So Melbourne Business School are our learning development partners. So, we're civil engineers. We can present material and so on. But what Melbourne Business School have done is they've got a real expertise in doing this really well from an online perspective. Okay. And so what we want is for the barriers to entry to be as low as possible. And so getting people to travel to one place, that's high cost and time intensive. And, people, for example, who work in engineering consultancies, they're just not going to get that time.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've, thought really carefully about how to build the course into people's flow of work. So there is some course time, but then there's also learning that you're doing in your regular work.
Yeah, right. Wow. And what sort of traction are you said it's early days, but what kind of traction are you getting in the industry? How early? How many years has this been going for?
So look, it's not a course which has emerged as yet. We've done we did a taster late last year, which was very well received. We got some excellent feedback. We learned a lot and so on. And, now it's our time to, kind of sort of cement that interest and, put it into a package, if you like. And then once we got funding, then we can start building and then we can start making it all real.
So what does success look like for Ground Level Alliance, let's say 5 years from now?
Wow. Okay. So we've got a few cohorts who've gone through this course and we've got a really strong alumni. So the network, as we talked about before, it's people who bring about change. And it's that collaboration. So one of the things that underpins Insitutek is collaboration. But I think it's, so powerful across our industry. If you get people collaborating together and, from different organizations, there's some real power in that. And so the idea is to create these sort of individual seeds within an organization. So let's say 2 for the first course and then another 2 for the next course and so on. That's 4, then that's 6, and then that's 8 and so on. It starts expanding your own organization. But then you've got all these other organizations around you who've got the same headspace, right? And you've gone on the same learning journey together through this Ground Level Alliance Sustainability and Civil Construction course. And you've got all these peers in the industry that you can lean on. And that becomes really interesting because when you've got a problem, you go, okay, I remember this person over here, they were dealing with that problem. Now I need to, make contact with them because I want to talk through the barriers that I'm experiencing and find out how they manage to get rounds and if I can learn anything from them, as an example.
And that's how you build momentum, isn't it?
That's
when
how you
you're
build
not doing
momentum.
it alone. So this collaboration piece, I find this so exciting and so interesting. So last Friday, I attended a conference called Force for Good. It was the travel industry coming together, and it's been going for a few years. And it was fascinating to learn about what the industry, the wider industry, is doing. And I think there were about 500 people there, maybe more, and how invested they were, in this idea of being a force for good. Now, Intrepid Travel, who is a B Corp and who is an organisation that regular listeners know I keep going back to again and again and again. I hold them up as one of Australia's and the world's best examples of purpose-driven business. They have long adopted that collaboration over competition framing.
Sure.
They've created all of these resources, from their decarbonisation plan to their animal welfare toolkit to so many, many more, and made them available for the industry. And you could see the co-founder, Jeff Manchester, was there, as well as other Intrepid people, but they were like superstars, right? And so Intrepid, Future Group is another one. They open source, like all of their resources and policies, they make available on the website for anybody to.
We've taken a lead from them as well, and we do the same.
Yeah, and this is it. And the result of that is it attracts your people. Those.
It's really interesting because, and excuse my French, but most of our clients couldn't give a shit that we're B Corp certified, using your business as a force for good. Yeah, great. Okay, nice for you, whatever. But for us, it gives us juice, right? And, in a fairly dry industry, juice is good.
Yeah.
And look what our little organization is up to, right? I mean, you look at our client list and so on, you'd be astonished. It's like, how on earth do they manage to, get clients like this and that and so on? It's hard work. It's, doing the pioneering work. It's putting in the hard yards and, so on. But, now, we're respected in the industry. We're invited, to be keynote address, speakers and, so on at industry events and those types of things. And, I talked at the beginning when we were sort of framing and talking about, the role that you can play directly, but also the influence that you can have within the industry. And it's, maybe through this podcast and, other things that, more people get to start thinking about their own businesses and what they potentially can do differently with their business, right? So I see business as this really powerful vehicle to be able to make change. And it's through the individuals within that business that change will happen. And, and those organizations taking leadership and having the courage to put the head up, above the parapet and 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 share, their thoughts and challenge the status quo and so on. So, I mean, I think it's actually helpful that, I'm not a civil engineer by training. And, it's a confession that I make, at the beginning of, when we do technical, presentations and, things like that. But we've got, that street cred, if you like, that practical experience of learning on the ground and, being educated and rubbing shoulders with some really smart people and, and that's, kind of sort of led us to where we are now. So coming back to your question for the Ground Level Alliance, I would love to see that sustainability is becoming much more of a people who work in civil construction, their daily thinking.
Love that.
That's what we're aspiring for. And, in terms of the Ground Level Alliance, in terms of the Insitutek work, it's basically that, we're actually able to bring about some of the changes that we're pushing for, within the industry. There's some really interesting things, for example, happening with mine tailings at the moment, which is waste from the mining process and the way in which we care for those wastes and how we use those wastes. And so, we're working in that field. We're working in, infrastructure construction and, some of the practices that we've had in place for 30, 40 odd years, they're not serving us that well. And we've shown how to do it differently, but it hasn't become standardized yet. And we're working with our collaborators to try and, make that become standardized. And, so there are pockets of industry improvement that's happening, but we'd like it to be, more widespread.
And at the end of the day, it is innovation that we need. The world is changing so fast, faster than we can respond to it. If we do not change the way we approach things, we're going to get left behind.
And so you asked a question earlier, about the moment. And one of the things that when I was going through my period of deep reflection, I thought about was legacy. And so in a way, I'm kind of in my legacy phase. I actually think about that, right? Geez, I mean, I'm only just over 50, right? But because of the experience that I've had, I'm thinking about legacy. What difference do I want to leave behind? And if we can do things to make our industry better, more sustainable, more responsible, and so on, we're all in.
Damn right. Okay, so legacy, and this is the kind of legacy I love. I hear a lot about legacy, particularly from leaders who, have had a huge successful career and they're looking at retirement and they suddenly look back and go, what's my legacy? But most of them, I think this is fair to say, will go down the well-traveled route of, I better go support a non-profit organisation and give of all my experiences. What I love about what you're doing, Robin, is that it's not that, and that it is, I mean, you have created it's a non-profit, isn't it? Ground
Level Alliance, yes.
Yeah. But your legacy is about how do you change the industry? It's about using all the knowledge and skills that you've gained and the connections and influence you have and, bringing together a group of people who care as much as you do about changing it. And that's the kind of legacy that leaves its mark.
Absolutely.
Love that. Love that. We are almost out of time. So before I ask the final question, which I will leave to you to close out the show, Is there anything you would like to share here? Is there anything you would like to invite our listeners to do or whatever?
Sure. So I may direct you to Ground Level Alliance if it's something that you're interested in. Maybe you've got a case study that might be valuable to share with us, for example. There's all sorts of ways in which you can get involved. So go on to the Ground Level Alliance website, groundlevelalliance.org, and you'll find a Get Involved tab at the top. So click on that, see if there's anything in there that resonates with you. And, there's all sorts of ways of following us on socials and, those types of things. If you're in the civil engineering profession and you're looking for innovation, so for example, a civil contractor or something like that, then if we don't know each other, we should. And I'd love to, invite you to reach out to me, for example, on LinkedIn or something like that. And, let's have a conversation. We're interested in, pushing the industry forward. We've been doing it for a while now. We figured out some of the levers that work and the ones that don't. And we'd love to have a conversation and see where it takes us.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you for the work you're doing. It is really inspiring. I hope you get a lot of interest from this podcast, but also just generally with what you're doing. I would love to, and we'll include links on the show notes. I would ask you to close out the show by answering this final question. If your work through Insitutek, Ground Level Alliance, the course, all of it, if it succeeded, like over, I don't know how many years, 5-10 years, if it succeeded beyond your wildest dreams, what might that look like? What do you think the world could look like as a result of that?
Gosh, that's a great question. So what I see is I see engineers really empowered and making real transformational difference in the way in which we construct projects. We've got real power in the levers that we can pull, and those engineers and people in the civil construction space will be pulling those levers with confidence, whether they be designers, whether they be site engineers, whether they be project directors, project managers. They know what needs to be done, and they're pulling the levers, and we're really making a transformational difference in the industry. That's really what I would love to see.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the For Love and Money podcast. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into the purpose movement, visit us at thecauseeffect.com.au. And remember, doing good is good for business. So if you're not doing good, then what are you doing?